I'll hand you over then to Daniel Greenberg from Clarivate. So Daniel, we've got 35 minutes to hear from you, 20 minutes of a presentation, if you would mind. And then Michael we'll let Michael loose on you to ask you some follow-up questions. So if that all sounds fine, I'll let you have the floor. Daniel, over to you.
Yep, sounds great. Thanks a lot, and thanks in general for the DPC for the great stuff that you're doing. I think this specific topic is super important. It's been so many times where we start a process with a customer who has sort of like legacy systems. They've been using a system for 15 years, sometimes even more. And there's some weird stuff going on there. There's like the data model doesn't really fit into sort of what they're doing, and they're wasting a lot of time on sort of redundant processes and so on. And almost always, when you try to understand the sort of root cause of why this is happening, it almost always goes back to their procurement and the implementation process, to decisions that were made like 15 years ago. So while the process of the procurement and the implementation is a very short time period compared to the entire sort of ongoing phase, the agreement that you have with whoever it is. It could be like only half a year, and then you use the system for 20 years. But the decisions that you make in that half a year could be critical. So good decisions are ones which you'll benefit from, and you could always look back 10 years later and saying, "Gosh, that was a good decision." And bad decisions are sometimes very, very difficult to revert back. Especially as time goes by. So it's a very important topic, and I will present just some slides. So I am Daniel Greenberg, Director of Product Management for Digital Solutions at Clarivate, Ex Libris at Clarivate. Rosetta is our digital preservation solution, which has been around for almost 20 years. And we have a lot of experience with procurement processes of different types of institutions and implementation projects, which have really spanned between small projects for academic institutions and massive projects of billions of files for large national libraries. And it's really, we've had a sort of like a core implementation team which has gained experience over all these years and is running ahead with the new opportunities. And maybe if we have to define the solution in one sentence, it's an end-to-end digital asset management and preservation solution for libraries, archives, and museums, guaranteeing long-term access and optimal exposure to your important digital assets. And really it's a wide range of institution types, and we've built the solution accordingly. It's a flexible solution. It's an open solution under the assumption that digital preservation is really the backbone of your architecture. Regardless of who you are and what you are, we need to be able to take our solution and fit it into your strategy. Rather than the opposite. You don't need to twist and turn like you need to do sometimes with solutions. Your strategy into the solution. We want to not only fit into your strategy but enhance it. And we take care of the sort of the classical risks which have been recognized over the years. And as I'll talk about soon, we have a vibrant and a community of experts who continuously research the latest risks and any information which is important about all the file formats out there. And they take that research, and we take that research, and we basically install it in the system, as we'll see. So I guess the first challenge I'll talk about is the institution needs to understand, what is their story? What is the overall strategy of their digital archives? And how does digital preservation fit into it? So it's not just a question about digital preservation. It's about, in general, special collections, teaching and learning material, thesis, dissertations, and so on. How does digital preservation fit into it? And of course, the answer could be different for different use cases at your institution. So we've built the solution in a very flexible way, in a way that can cater for different use cases. It's a very open architecture. It can be installed on-premise or on the cloud. We have very active customers on either topologies. And the solution allows to really build it according to what your strategy is. So we work throughout the procurement process and certainly towards the implementation. We ask questions like, and we also hope that you turn to us with those pieces of information of which departments will Rosetta serve. So what are the use cases that you would want to use digital preservation for? Do you have a mandate? Is it coming from your own? Is it your own initiative? Does it come together with standards which you have to adhere to? So what type of content or use cases do you need our system to integrate with? Is it archival workflows, research, library management? And of course, it could be either, it could be both. We have institutions where Rosetta serves both the library, so it integrates with solutions such as Alma or other library management solutions, but also they have their research. So it's basically a cross-department strategy with digital preservation. And here, the part of the challenge, and this is something where a call out to all of those of you who are looking into implementing a digital preservation solution. The challenge is not just about gaining knowledge, but it's actually building a team, which you probably didn't have that type of team till now. It's a team which needs to serve multiple departments at your institution. So you're basically providing preservation as a service to your research office, to your library, and to your archives. And that's an organizational challenge rather than a technical one or a topology one. And that's something which you really need to finalize at least the strategy of it, even if you don't implement it on day one, but know where you're going. And that will help us build a solution in an optimal way so that in the future it will be scalable, also inside your institution from a department point of view. Other questions would be, will this serve just a dark archive, or will it actually be publications going out to specific, to patrons, to students, or to the general public? If, for example, with special collections and so on, and that will also determine what where the focus should be when we set up the solution. And then more sort of characteristics of your repository. And we've seen sort of institutions implementing Rosetta with billions of articles, which of course poses a challenge of scale, volume, and so on. Specifically, we did with one of our customers who was intending to store, and they are now actually doing it, billions of articles. We did a proof of concept, and we actually set up a pilot program where we tested out the system's capability to cope with billions of articles, which is a huge load on the index, on the database, and so on. And after we've proven our success, then they went ahead with the full implementation. So that has its own operational challenges. And then we have video collections, which is probably not a challenge in numbers or in the index, but more, of course, in the processing time. Web archives, of course, with its own challenges of updating web archives and on the ongoing basis. And then more unique material like databases and so on. And that's a very important question to ask before we actually set up the system. We need to understand what type of submissions applications are we expected to use, and so on. And how do we take the Rosetta data model, which is a very flexible one, and fit it to your own data, right? So we have, of course, the premise data model of intellectual entities, representations, files, and we'll have collections also. And we've also introduced structural IEs, which we've spoken about a lot in the previous IPRIS. And we then take sort of your use case, so articles, could that fit into structural IEs, video collections? Are there relations between your different videos? How can we reflect that in our data model? So a lot of questions on the characteristics of your inventory, which we then take and fit it into our data model. And of course, regional standards. Sometimes you have no choice but to, other than the global standards for, data privacy, for security, for accessibility, you might have your own regional standards, and we can work together with you to build those. So beyond those types of questions, there are then more operational questions or data protection and so on. Like we have customers coming on saying, geofencing is critical. We can't have our data be exported outside of our country. And our setup, of course, allows that. versus others who have a cloud-first policy. They want to, for cost efficiency, for environmental issues, they want to have their data installed, hosted by us on our data centers, which are optimized, but do provide full replication of your data and disaster recovery and so on. Others have very sensitive data and need to be completely disconnected from the global network, and that is something which is also possible with our on-premise installation. And we have quite a lot of customers having that type of requirement, and we're actually seeing it more and more common. As we see the challenges of cyber security, then we see more and more institutions who want to have, for the exceptionally sensitive data, they want to have their own on-premise and disconnected environment. And then we also allow institutions to plug in their own storage layer. We have a storage abstraction layer, so then they can basically select whichever they have, which is important for cost efficiency if they have some sort of, organizational discount on Google Cloud or in Azure. But also it allows them to select the most environmental storage. So we allow that sort of combination of, you select your own storage and we plug it into our solution. The second challenge, which was we spoke about in the panel, was a trustworthy exit strategy, and that's really a very important aspect. So the obvious part of it is that we are building the solution over international standards, which is super important for exit strategy. It's both important for operational ongoing usage of the system, where you can integrate easily with other solutions because you are based on international protocols and standards, but also for exit strategy, when if you need to one day have a dump of all your data, you can very easily then migrate it over to another solution. And the type of stuff that we have, then one of the focus areas in architecture is rebuildability. So basically, any commit that you do, any save that you do in the system creates another METS file, and it's stored in your storage layer. So you have the database, which is an application, but you also have all the METS files aside your files, your actual stream files, and they are also replicated. And we have fixity checks running on your METS files. So it's equally important, the METS file, which contains all of the descriptive metadata, administrative and structural metadata, to have that preserved as well as your actual files. And what we have is we created an export job, which not only exports your files and metadata, but it can export all the historic METS files of your intellectual entities, from day one. So you can create a dump of every single METS file since the content was deposited into the system, out of the system, together with all the historic files. So we only logically delete files if you want to delete, which means that eventually, if you need to export it, it will still be there for exporting. And that's also super important for exit strategy. And the last is that our METS implementation is public. It's on the Library of Congress site. We also have our documentation, which isn't a closed documentation. It's open to everyone. You don't have to be a customer. And there we have detailed documentation of our METS implementation and premise. The third challenge is that you want to know that you are joining a community, so that you'll have peers you can consult with, and you want to guarantee that whichever challenge you come across, so there's someone there to talk to who has come across the same challenge. And that always happens. Doesn't matter if you have, weird material, you have, the government comes along with some really what sounds to you like strange requirements, but you will always have someone to talk to who has something similar. And the community is really one of the core aspects of our solution, because they not only impact the roadmap, they impact the actual solution. So it's a very widespread and diverse range of customers, national libraries, academic institutions, many state libraries. We have 9 national libraries. We have many state libraries, archives, and so on. Their impact on the installation is that they actually produce what's called the format library, which is based on Pronom, but it's enriched with their own expertise and knowledge and research. And they produce every now and then an updated format library, which has the latest and greatest information about all the formats, which tools should be used to extract technical metadata, to identify risks, and so on. And then all of that is then installed automatically into the customer's environments. So you don't have to be an expert on day one, and you will still benefit from that knowledge which has been provided by the community. And we have the top figures in the global digital preservation community, part of our community, and really everyone benefits from it. And that, I think that really what gives you some sort of peace of mind that you're going to have the best possible digital preservation practices in your system. So the next challenge is you want to guarantee there's a dynamic roadmap, right? That this isn't, even if it started off as a great product, many products then go into some sort of maintenance mode. We have a very dynamic roadmap. We invest in the different areas in preservation, and we have different working groups also of customers for each one of these areas. So just an example of some of the stuff which is going to come out in 26 and 27. We're improving our risk management, and this is being continuously analyzed by our digital preservation working group, and that's being continuously enhanced. Around delivery, we're working on an integration of Rosetta with another solution called Alma Specto, which is an AI-driven digital asset management solution. So we're working how to really fit those two together so you can actually benefit from both worlds. Structured IEs, which I mentioned, which is a concept where IEs not only represent files, but also represent a structure, and therefore you're preserving the entire hierarchy and structure of your solution. And we're working on a new delivery mechanism for structural IEs. And I think that's a fantastic example of our collaboration with the community. We had a back and forth where they provided use cases of many different institutions. We translated that into design. We provided a drop one, first release for testing, and we're soon coming out with already the second phase, which is ready for production. So that was really a great effort done by our community. Integrations, we're continuing our support to expand our REST APIs beyond our traditional SOAP APIs. We're improving our integrations with Microsoft Azure and S3, both local and cloud. And also around data management, we're also having many improvements around there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it 3 minutes left or 13? I've lost track of time. Or neither?
3, sorry, I'm
3. Okay, thank you.
at you, but you can't.
All right, so I'll do this quickly then. So the typical procurement process, you can see here, we have the initial information gathering, which is by a questionnaire, but then the important part is, having a meeting where we hear your story, what are your pain points, and mainly what's your vision for the next 1, 5, 10 years. And we build then the architecture accordingly of our system together. And then we have an implementation plan and project with a team who has done dozens of implementations, and they know how to take your strategy and translate it into the system architecture and how to fit it into your wider ecosystem. You asked about phased growth, and here this is a very, I think, essential part of Rosetta where it supports both volume scale, where you can build your topology and expand it with time, both vertically. So if you have sort of like all-in-one servers which serve all the needs and then you expand it, or horizontal growth, where you would have, for example, you need to invest in deposits if you have a peak in deposits, or if you have massive delivery to end users, so you would invest in those servers. And that is really important for environmental aspects. You don't just throw in servers, they are dedicated to where you need them. And then the knowledge scale, as I mentioned before, you can start with automated preservation, and with time you can actually not only listen to the community, but you can contribute to the community. And we see that all the time with customers who started off with zero knowledge, and after 3-4 years, they've become big experts thanks to the community around them. So that's it for me. 1 minute left. So I can say what I like. My car is for sale. Just joking.
Thanks, Daniel. That was brilliant. Well done for keeping that to time. That's much appreciated. So we have quite a specific question in the chat already from Martin Donnelly, and again I'll read it out for the tape. So he's asking, how does Rosetta relate to Specto? I've seen Specto described as having digital preservation functions, and he's asking because he has an Alma digital implementation, and he's looking at whether it might extend to address digital preservation. And Sam says she was going to ask that question too. So are you able to respond?
Yes. So basically, we have, I guess, two flavors of digital preservation at Clarivate. One is what I just presented, Rosetta, which is our full-blown expert digital preservation solution. We have the community, our digital preservation community is fully invested in Rosetta. And what we have with Alma Spectre, I'll say very, very briefly, because I'm not here to sell Alma Spectre. We can do a separate session on that. But Alma Spectre is a digital asset management solution for special collections and so on. And it also has an additional layer add-on of digital preservation, which is automated. There isn't a dedicated community for it. It's really for those where their focus is on digital asset management and publishing and so on, and AI and exhibition building, but they also want to have sort of an additional layer in the background. So it's not the same level of expertise and depth, but it is sufficient for many institutions as complementary to the digital asset management. So when we talk with our community, our Rosetta community, about integrating Rosetta and Spectre, so it's taking the preservation of Rosetta and just the digital asset management of Alma Spectre. And there sort of you benefit from both worlds. So having the full deep sort of preservation of Rosetta and the community, but then also benefit from, AI and exhibition builders and stuff that we have in Alma Spectre. That's a general idea.
Thanks, Daniel. I saw, Martin, you've lit up there and you gave a thumbs up. Are you happy with that, or have you got a follow-on question?
Yeah, I completely understand that Daniel's here to talk about Rosetta, but that they're under the same sort of company banner. So yeah, we're just dipping our toes in this. I'm a complete, well, I'm not a complete newbie to digital preservation, but it's never been my major focus. So I'm very much in learning and listening mode at the moment.
Thanks, Martin.
Thanks.
And thanks, Daniel, for answering. Perhaps whilst other people think of questions to put in the chat, you sort of described the sort of implementation. You had a nice graphic where sort of showing the various steps that you go through. Do you have a kind of typical timeline from sort of how long the procurement process takes, or does it very much depend on whether someone's already an Ex Libris customer or what?
Yeah, so no, it isn't dependent because Rosetta is a standalone solution. It doesn't depend on other solutions. So even if another customer has Alma, whatever, it doesn't really doesn't relate unless they want sort of to integrate between the solutions. But so yes, we have a typical timeline which sort of shortens with time. We've had an implementation of, I guess if we go to the extreme in size and complexity, we had a national library with billions of files, and we fully completed that project in 9 months. And including shutdown of their previous solution and ongoing ingest into the new one. The other extreme is really more straightforward with less sort of complicated migration or integrations, and that could take around 3 months. It also depends on whether it's an on-premise or a hosted solution. If it's hosted, we can provision the environment, in a couple of days. But if it's on-premise, there's of course a dependency on the institution itself provisioning and installing the environment, or at least purchasing it. Sometimes there's a separate tender, of course, for the hardware. We then do the installation, which could be done remotely. So there's a lot of parameters which impact the durability of the project, but it typically ranges between 3 to 9 months.
Thanks, Daniel. And I guess sort of related to that, and I think we touched on this a little bit in the panel section discussion we had last week. So if people haven't seen that, they might want to go back and watch the recordings. But have you noticed any sort of are there common stumbling blocks or pitfalls to the procurement process to people? Do you often find people don't know their collections well enough, or don't have a clear sense of what they're trying to achieve, or that they have unrealistic expectations about the timeline, or is it all of the above?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. I think mainly one of the big questions, which is sometimes is not what you have today, right? Not replicating what you have today, because those usually sort of, you both don't benefit from actually the change of architecture, which you're anyway doing. And usually there's a reason that you're moving on, and therefore, it's an opportunity to rethink. But that is sort of sometimes intuition, because it's the easier way, right? Let's say what we did and let's just replicate it. So the challenge here, which is a big challenge, but it's worth it. It's certainly worthwhile in the long run, is to think, how do I think fresh and rebuild my strategy and architecture? That's one of the pitfalls, I think, which if it's avoided, then it can be huge benefit for the long run. And apart from that, I mentioned at the beginning that one of the big challenges is not just about installing and so on. It's an organizational change. How do you invest in digital preservation as an institution? So you need to have a team. You need to have someone who's dedicated to digital preservation. And what we see often, one of the pitfalls is that institutions, they have someone with the digital preservation cap on just for the implementation project, and then they move on to other projects after the implementation, after they go live. And they have to understand that digital preservation, if you don't want it to be just sort of automated and you actually want it to be like full-blown preservation, you need to be involved in it. You need to have someone who comes to IPRES, who talks to the community, who understands the challenges, so that when they have to make a real strategic decision, format migration, or you get a new collection and you don't know what to do with it, you need to be prepared and have the person in place to do it. I think that's slightly differentiates the digital preservation from other types of use cases like library management. You can't completely automate it if you want it to be the best possible preservation.
Absolutely agree there, Daniel. You also talked a little bit about how you said customers can adjust the Rosetta data model to suit their needs. But maybe you said, or perhaps I just didn't quite catch it. Is that something that customers can do totally independently, or do they need to work with colleagues of yours, or does it very much depend on their own sort of technical skills and competencies?
So yes, it depends on their set of skills. We work very closely with the institutions. We do assume that on day one or even year one, they probably won't have sufficient expertise to really make all these decisions on their own. But what's very important in our implementation strategy is that we, of course, train the trainer so that they can then go on and be independent of us. So especially once they go live, we want them to have enough knowledge to be able to make those decisions on their own. But the first decision on how to fit in our data model with their use case, that's something which would be joint, because we also have the experience from our previous customers and implementations. And again, it's very rare that an institution comes along with a completely new use case which we've never come across. So articles, for example, an institution comes with billions of articles. Should every article be an IE in itself? Should it be? How should the journal and the issues be reflected in the data model? And these are questions which are also for the customer, not just for them. For us, it's also what's important for you to preserve. How dynamic do you expect your data to be? And these would then impact how we build it in the system. And of course, does it need to be published to the end users? And if it does, which information is it important for you to publish to end users? And there too, that could impact the data model.
Thanks, Daniel. And the other thing I was going to pick up on is you talked about how the importance of kind of building a community around the product and engaging with customers and enabling them to sort of feed into the sort of the roadmap for Rosetta. Could you say a little bit more about how that process works? Is it regular physical meetings? Is it done virtually, or a combination of the two? Is it done on a straight sort of feature set that people vote on, or can people, I don't know, bump things up the roadmap if they're prepared to pay for it, or how does it actually work?
Yeah. So no, they certainly don't need to pay for it. We have well, first of all, meetings. We have monthly meetings of the working groups. They have both internal, like without us, and then many of the meetings are with us. We have an annual on-site meeting, which was in Wellington last time, and it's going to be in Munich in June. So those are the meetups. But the result of these meetups is enhancement requests, which are built over a template. And the template includes, first of all, and most importantly, it's use cases. And we strive to have as many use cases as possible from different types of institutions, so that we can guarantee that the development would then, be both what they're looking for and would be widely adopted. After the use cases, there is the requirements section with priorities and with must-haves versus optional. And then we start a communication through Basecamp, for those of you who are familiar, but it's a communication platform. where we start a conversation. We then suggest, we have asked questions, we suggest a initial design. They get back to the community, gets back to us. If we set up meetings if required. And that also guarantees at the end that sort of what we deliver is actually resolves their problems. I think it's very unique, the way we work with them. We have a very, very close relationship with our customers. And also the community is very active in trying to pull in as soon as possible new institutions. So there isn't just a core, a team of customers who do everything and decide everything for everyone. They try to sort of pass on the knowledge. There's webinars all the time about different, different stuff which is related to digital preservation, so that also the newbies can contribute as soon as possible to the community.
Thanks for that. And lastly, because I think I asked one of the other earlier speakers, are you able to sort of report back on customers' kind of individual sort of environmental impact for their organization, or does it kind of get lost in the mix? If they have to report back on their carbon footprint of their use of storage and things like that, can you provide that information?
So that differs between our on-premise installations and our hosted ones. So for the on-premise one, it's the customer's environment, and we build it in a way so that they can really plug in whatever they want to have for their storage, and they have sort of the environmental standards which they have to adhere to at the institution or their state or country. And they have their own sort of monitoring of the solution from that point of view, that is for the on-premise one, and we also allow to adapt the solution with time. So if you want to migrate your storage over to a more environmental or more modern and cost efficient and so on, you can do that with time, and the system will be agnostic to that change, and we support doing that. In the system, we have jobs for migrating your storage over to a new layer and so on. For the hosted one, we're hosting it on our own sort of cloud, which serves thousands of institutions with other products at Ex Libris. And there we have, yes, our own reports and our environmental impact and so on. So that is something which is fully covered. And as you can imagine, with thousands of institutions globally, there are a lot of very strict requirements around that. So those are covered pretty well on the hosted version too.
Thanks very much. And my last one, you touched on the importance of having an exit strategy, and you said that's fairly straightforward with Rosetta. Is that I mean, obviously you don't want people to go, but do you have a sense of how long that takes? Is it very easy? Is it like, hit a button and bail and everything happens automatically in the background, or does it require a bit of sort of heads up and a bit of time to sort of exit the system, I guess?
Yeah. So I think we've made it as straightforward as possible, especially with our export job. We have just a job which you can run on some of the data, all of the data, and it exports, as I said, all the METS files from day one, not just the latest, with the files. So you have also the file sections in the METS which points at where your file is in the structure. And basically you then have to run your scriptology on whatever's the output is and adjust it to your new system. And the mapping also of the METS implementation and our premise implementation is all publicly available. So that really, I think, also looking at how it's implemented in other systems, I think it's really is an easy process. And in fact, we've even had some of our institutions have been running with us for 20 years. It was important for them also to invest in that, not because they intend on moving on, but because it's just a core requirement of digital preservation, as you know.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Daniel. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn by saying, do you think you could just pop your email address in the chat so that if people have follow-on questions, particularly about Rosetta for you, then they know how to get hold of you? That'd be fantastic. But Sarah's beaming from ear to ear, so I'm going to pass back to her.